So, are you ready to get on the road? Are you sure you're ready to get on the road? Welcome to the live stream. I'm Joni Zander, the content creator and road guide here at TheGalavan. I help women get on the road and become successful nomads. I'm in a lot of women's Facebook groups for RVing and van life. And there's so many times where I see women nervous about launching. No matter how much preparation you've done or not done, launching into full-time nomad life can be anxiety inducing. So tonight I'm going to talk about what it might be like, what you need to have to finally launch, and more importantly, what you don't need before you launch. If you have questions as we go along, go ahead and put it in the chat, starting with a question mark, and I will answer those at the end. And women, make sure you put our first Thursday discussions on your calendar. This is really next week. Last week I said it was going to be next week, but I forgot that there was a fifth Thursday in August. So these do happen after the live stream on the first Thursday of the month to deep dive into the topics that we've been covering and to get your personal nomadic questions answered. You can grab the link in our Facebook group, Gal Adventurers. All right. Um, so I launched 6 years ago, 6 years ago last week, actually, on the 24th of August, and I launched to an event. So oh my gosh, I had researched for like 5 years. Um, I designed my van and hired a tiny house builder to build it out, and it took him 17 months to build out my van. And so I was more than ready to launch by the time I was launched. But even after I got my van, so I got my van on May 20th of 2017, and I didn't launch until August 24th. And what I did was I spent those months moving into my van. So, I was downsizing, I was getting rid of living spaces, getting rid of all the things, and so what I did before I launched was um, I moved everything that I knew I needed in my van into the van, and then as I lived in the van and I didn't live in the house at all anymore, I lived in my van, and, I would if I needed something from the house, I'd go get it, and then I'd bring it back and put it away, which if you have the flexibility to do that, that's a really, really great way to move into your space so that everything has a home. Not everyone has that flexibility or the luxury to be able to do that, so I feel really fortunate that I was able to do it that way. But, regardless of how much preparation you're able to do, um, we all bring too much stuff. We all, or most of us, plan too much, and delay getting on the road. And so if you're in that position, I say just get the necessities done. Get some way to store and prepare food, some way to sleep comfortably, some way to potty, and and just know that you're capable, that there are communities available. So if you're in that, uh, in that phase of your journey, then I really encourage you to come join our Nomadic Women's, discussion on the first Thursday of the month to create that community, to really build up your community so that you know who you can lean on. Um, and I do say that having nomadic community makes all the other hurdles so much easier. So, um, so yeah, community is huge, huge, huge. So as I mentioned, I launched to an event. So I was going to a conference. But like this weekend is Descend on Bend. You could launch to that. I have a friend who's going to be hosting some more what does she call them? Gather Over Yonders. You could launch to one of those. You could join Escapers and launch to one of their convergences. Or you could launch to maybe the Women's Rubber Tramp Rendezvous that happens in January. So I or a concert. Maybe there's a concert that you want to go to. So I recommend that launching to an event does a couple of things for you. It lets you meet people right away. Um, it gives you a hard deadline. You gotta get there when it starts, right? Um, and it just gives you the motivation to get the thing done. I think a lot of us just really kind of like put like, oh, I can't quite go yet. Not everything's perfect. Not everything has to be perfect. That is not a requirement of being on the road. Now, possibly, where is my chat? There it is. Um, so I would say that try really hard not to have everything perfect. Much more important than perfection on the road is flexibility. So start to get in that mindset of being flexible. Things are going to go wrong. That's gonna happen. It happens in all aspects of life, whether you're living in an apartment or a house or living with other people or living as a nomad, things go wrong. So just have that flexibility, know that you can do these things. You can get help, you can fix the things yourself. There's so much that you can do just from watching YouTube University and getting that getting those things done, and it gives you so much more confidence. So, not everything has to be perfect. That said, the place that you really wanna focus on for having as much perfection as possible is in the mechanics of your rig, whatever it is, if it's if you're in a Prius or a van or an RV, whatever it is, a truck pulling a trailer, you want to have your vehicle be as mechanically sound as possible before you launch. So, and it is harder to find mechanics on the road than in the place that you're used to. So if you have a good mechanic, make sure that your rig is mechanically sound as much as possible, and make sure that your tires are good. Good tires are super important for being on the road, and that is something that you really should take care of before you go. Even if you have good tread, if your tires are too old, that can be a problem. So if you just Google how to read the code on a tire, the date code, so that you can make sure that your tires aren't too old, and even Google like how old should tires be, and because it kind of depends on what sorry, I have to not have the chat where I can see it because it's too distracting for me. I love that you're chatting. Please keep going. Um, but I get so distracted. So that's why I answer questions on the at the end unless I have a guest on, and then I can answer them as they're talking. So, but yes, look into how old your tire should be because each tire brand can be different as well. Um, all right. So, another thing to know about ahead of time is you don't have to have everything that you think you need before you launch. There are Walmarts and Amazon lockers pretty much everywhere. You can get America. It is not a problem to purchase things. So we are definitely a capitalist society, and we just don't make it that hard. So so if you're figuring this out and you're not sure, absolutely sure that you're going to use something, don't buy it ahead of time. See if you actually need it, and just know that you don't need as much as you might think you need. So save your money for your emergency fund instead of things that you think you might need, if that makes sense. Okay. So when you are for your first couple of nights, let's go into your first couple of nights. Actually, no, I'm going to back up just a little bit. So stealth is an illusion on the road. There are so many people living in cars and vans and things that people know that people are in rigs. It doesn't seem to matter. So don't worry too much about stealth. So don't focus that much on that, and focus on being, having a comfortable place to sleep, having a place to store and prepare foods, and a way to potty. Okay. Before you launch, it's a good idea to have all of your health appointments done. So all of the routine things that you do for your health, mammograms, all that stuff. Um, and if you can, and if you are able to afford health insurance, go ahead and take care of that also before you launch. Um, Also, banking. So these are the things that are harder to do on the road. Banking is much harder to do on the road, especially setting up banks. I really highly recommend that if you're going to be a full-time nomad, that you use an online bank like Ally, American Express, actually Fidelity. Those have really good features for nomads. The banks that don't have banks, right? The banks that aren't your local credit union or even a national bank. So a national bank as a nomad is better than a local credit union, but I find that the online banks are even better because they aren't quite so focused on you coming into the bank and having you have to have a residential address for every bank because of, I believe it's the Patriot Act, but the online banks are much more flexible, and make sure that you go with one that refunds all of your ATM charges. So I can get money out of any ATM, and my bank refunds all of the ATM charges that the local bank is charging. So highly recommend that. And the nice thing about having a an online bank is that they're not going to expect you to go in and deposit a check or whatever. They're going to expect you to have an app on your phone and to do all of your banking on your phone or your computer, which is a huge benefit as a nomad. And speaking of online, make sure that everything you possibly can is paperless. So go into everything, your health insurance, your whatever it is, and ask them to not send you physical mail. And then that brings us to mailing. So the last thing that and I might be missing some things, but the last thing that I was thinking of was mailing services. So either set up a mailing service. Now, this is something that you might end up doing while, on the road. So if you're going to be changing your residence, and we'll talk about that like in detail in another video, but if you're changing to maybe South Dakota or Nevada or something, that might be the mailing service might be something that you want to do after you launch. But you can also, have a friend collect your mail for you. That's actually, I've done both. I started with a friend, I changed to another friend. I went to a mailing service in Nevada, and then I went to a mailing service in South Dakota, and I went back to using a friend. So you'll figure out what works for you. Don't think you have to have all of this figured out before you launch. You just don't, because you're going to change things. You're going to figure out what works for you. And as I mentioned, flexibility is the most important the most important attribute to have as a nomad. All right. So let's talk about, let me move that up. No, I can't do that. There we go. Just trying to cover up that light spot. All right. So it's your first night. Where are you going? Are you going to, have you scoped out to make sure that the local Walmart is a place where you can overnight? Because you can't overnight at every Walmart. Or have you scoped out a boondocking spot that you want to go to? Or have you maybe made a reservation at a hip camp or a campground or something so that you can just know where you're going to be and maybe plan to be there for a couple of nights. So if you're following my recommendation to launch to an event. So you're gonna actually launch in enough time to have a few days to just figure yourself out. It Living on the road is so much different than living in a sticks and bricks. You have to adjust. You have to adjust to being alone if you haven't been alone. You have to adjust to your routines. I mean, it took my bladder 2 months to get used to peeing standing up with a pee style. So, you're you're not gonna figure everything out right away. Maybe you need to reorganize your things as you've stayed in it for 2 or 3 nights. Maybe you figure out that, "Oh, I have too much stuff. I need to stop by a Goodwill and drop off a lot of this stuff because it's too much." So give yourself the grace and be gentle with yourself as you figure this out, and just give it, allow for that adjustment period. Um, whether that takes you a couple of nights, whether it takes you a few weeks, a few months, um, don't quit before the first couple of months, because you'll figure this out. We figure this out, and I think you're going to cheat yourself if you give up too quickly. Trust your instincts, though. So, like, if you feel like you're in a situation where it's a little creepy, don't freak yourself out. Most situations on the road are safe, but really do listen to yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable and you thought you were always going to boondock because Joni always boondocks, maybe that's not the right thing for you. And so maybe you decide that you like campgrounds. Maybe you decide you like RV parks. Um, just because they're not right for me doesn't mean that they're not right for a lot of people, because there are a lot of people in campgrounds and RV parks. So really give yourself the space to figure that out. So my first night on the road after I launched, I think I ended up leaving just before rush hour, or maybe right during rush hour, which is not a great time to leave. But I was done. I was finally ready, um, and I knew about a boondocking spot about 2 hours away, and so that's what I did. I went to a boondocking spot up in the Cascades. It was a beautiful, quiet first night, and I did already have a few spots. I kind of knew like the route that I needed to take, and all of that, and I had a lot of flexibility in that schedule. I One night I stayed at a campground at Lassen National Park. I was heading from Eugene, Oregon to Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I visited with some family and just really took it a lot faster than I do now, but what I thought was pretty slow. Um, so yeah, so I think that is my biggest advice for launching. So let's see what we've got. I know I have some questions. What was the escapers group I was talking the escapers group I was talking about is Escapers. It is not just on Facebook. Escapers, it's Xscapers, and they are on Facebook, they are on Instagram, um, but they have a .com, and the .com is where you would register for convergences and see what convergences they have, what events they have. It's a RV club for working age RVers, however you define that. Um, let's see here. All right. So please, if you do have any questions, thank you so much for all of your comments. And I'm gonna show this on screen, that's pretty cute. She's already had her mom collect her mail at her house for the last couple of decades, so it was like she was already prepping to be a nomad. Absolutely. I love it. And Exie says, "I have decluttered many items, that I thought I needed. Now I have much more space." Yes. So, that's a really good point. So, the more stuff you're carrying in your small space, the less livable your space is. So, so if decluttering is a problem for you or something that you really struggle with, I do recommend that you watch my decluttering video. Um, is that what I call downsizing video, um, to help you with that process. But but yeah, most of us bring too much stuff. And actually, I'm at a point again where I've been adding stuff. I've been adding some toys, like I added a kayak this past year. So that comes with, a life preserver and paddles and, all the other stuff. I launched with a little tiny folding bike, and now I have a much larger electric bike, and so plus the bike bag and the pump and the battery charger and the battery, it's all this stuff. So, plus the helmet. And so yeah, it's always a process. So once again, don't feel like you have to have everything situated before you launch, because you don't. You're going to be changing things up. Um, and Just want to say just a little bit about the different. So think think I did a live stream about different ways to find free camping. Um, you might be street camping, and that's totally fine. Find a quiet place. Maybe the first spot doesn't work out for you. Maybe it does, and you're there for a night, and then you find a great park to stay at during the day, and then you find a different place to stay at night. Um, there is no one right way to be a nomad. And so just again, be gentle with yourself and know that there is a community of women who are here to support you, here to help you figure it out for yourself, because you can figure this out. We can point you to videos, we can talk you through things. A couple years ago, a friend of mine was launching. She was driving from Florida to Arizona to attend the RTRs, um, and I have two videos with her. Her name's Corbett, and she realized after she got going, she's like, I haven't driven for 17 years. And she kind of freaked out, and she reached out to the communities that she had become a part of and asked if anyone would come and drive her van. Well, one woman such a great idea. So one woman said, "You know what? You don't need somebody to come drive your van. I'm going to give you an itinerary. I'm going to tell you every day where you're going to stop for lunch, where you're gonna stop for the night." And she just basically day by day got her all the way from Florida to Arizona. So it doesn't have to be like in-person help. This is, women help each other, nomads help each other. There's a Facebook group called Nomads Helping Nomads or something like that. So, there's help available through the community. All right, so there's a question, can you tell the amount one should start with as an emergency fund? I think the recommendation is 3 months worth. Um, and what that is for you is going to depend on what your rig is, how much you drive. So if you are not driving a whole lot, then your fuel costs are gonna be less. Um, your your maintenance is probably gonna be less. And so, so that really depends, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with, I'm gonna say less than $3,000. Just which is kind of it might be a little high, but you'll know that you can do what you need to do with a good emergency fund. If you have an older rig, you're gonna need to save for maybe an engine replacement or something like that. If your tires are a little older, but they're still safe, you're gonna need to save for tires. So just know kind of where your rig is um, and kind of think out like what would I do you know, if my engine blows or my transmission or a tire. So really think about that. So now the emergency fund is different than your everyday expenses. And I'll go over money in a different video, but thank you for the reminder because an emergency fund is a really important piece to being ready to launch. It is more important, as I mentioned, to put money into emergency fund than into some stuff that you aren't sure you're gonna need. It can feel fun for us to buy a bunch of things to get ready. It feels like you're closer to getting ready to launch if you have more things collected. But honestly, you're ready more ready to launch if you have a bigger bank account. So the harsh realities of our world. So that is what I have for you tonight. And I am really, really looking forward to meeting with the women next week. So please make sure that you do have that on your calendar. So I'll do a shorter live stream next week, and then we'll meet for 45 minutes to an hour after that on butter. All of that information can be found in the Facebook group Gal Adventures. Until next week, enjoy your journey.